It's visited by world leaders and even has its own interfaith department, which organises visits from government, the civil service, representatives of other religions, and thousands of British schoolchildren a year. The mosque says the aim of these visits is to promote understanding and respect between the communities. Our reporter is filming as some of the interfaith groups are brought into the women's area.
So this is what we have in our heart. It's just
on this occasion, Mira meets them.
God, let me know how to reach you the right way.
On another occasion, a group of non-Muslims is invited to sit down with the circle. The preacher promotes Islam to them, but talks politely about other religions too.
And the message, the Quran, came to confirm the truth in the previous scriptures.
But as soon as the interfaith group leaves, the same preacher's tone changes completely. She now says Christian teachings are vile.
And we feel nothing sometimes going past the church. We don't look at it in disgust and think, subhanAllah, what are these people doing in there? What they say with their tongues is so vile and disgusting. It's an abomination.
Like the other preachers in the circle, she says she's teaching from the works of the Saudi scholars. In this case, Sheikh bin Baz, a former Grand Mufti of the kingdom. The teachings include that a Muslim cannot be tolerant of other religions.
He shouldn't just be indifferent and say things like, you go to church, you know, I go to the mosque, let's all stay together like one big happy family and all be united as humanity. This is false, this does not work, this concept is a lie, it's fake and it's a farce.
The circle preaches for 8 hours a day on Saturdays and Sundays. Any woman who goes there to pray is likely to hear their preaching. Our reporter is told the circle was set up years ago by Mira, but while she's been in Saudi Arabia, it's been run by this woman, Salim. She too preaches Saudi teachings. She says she's met a Muslim woman who is too friendly to non-Muslims.
When she sees a Kafir woman, big smile. When she turns around, she sees me there. Yeah. It's part of Islam, of the aqeedah, of the correct belief, that you love those who love Allah, and that you hate those who hate Allah. Okay?
Although the preachers say Muslims should act well with non-Muslims, in private they were often disparaging about their ways and beliefs. In 2 months at the mosque, we only recorded one incident of dissent. A worshipper sitting in the audience objects to the teachings on disbelievers, saying Islam encourages Muslims to mix with others.
There is an ayah of the Quran says, you know, we made of you peoples, different shu'ub, to know one another. And if you communicate with the other and you show the beauty of Islam, then, you know, then maybe people could come into Islam.
The preacher qualifies her statements a little.
It doesn't mean that we should oppress them. It doesn't mean that we don't give the right. It doesn't mean that we don't help them. Okay?
But then returns to the main theme.
It doesn't mean as well that we should befriend them.
Salim told us,
we are not blind followers of any government or any clerics. We do criticize other religions just as other religions criticize Islam. However, this does not mean that we show intolerance, aggression or violence to people of different faiths. And we have often emphasized that the Muslim's attitude towards his or her non-Muslim counterpart is one of fairness, compassion and tolerance. We encourage integration into society.
She said the comments that Muslims could not take British citizenship were erroneous and apologized for them. She said,
whilst it is recommended for a Muslim to migrate to a Muslim country, it is not obligatory.
In last year's dispatches, we found the mosque's official bookshop was selling a number of speeches by preachers promoting hatred and intolerance.
Yeah, dear. Ya Latif. The worst word that can ever be written!
Dr. Al-Dubayan told us the bookshop was independently run by a company called Dar al-Salam International Publications, a British company with links to Saudi Arabia. But he said he was seriously concerned and said that the DVDs had been removed immediately, pending an investigation. And he called on all British Muslim organisations to be vigilant about the message being spread on their premises, either during talks or on recorded DVDs. So our reporter went back to the bookshop and went to the same shelves to see if he had been as good as his word. But despite his promises, she found they're still selling the speeches of exactly the same preachers we identified last year. They're still selling DVDs of Murtaza Khan, a British school teacher and preacher. In this one, he attacks the Western idea that women can be independent from men.
The mental capacity of this society teaches you, I'm a woman in my own right. I can get my own job. I can get my own funding. I can get my own welfare. I can get my own flat. I can get my own home. I can get my own state benefit. I don't need you in my life. What is that? Deception of the devil.
And says men should control them.
A man is stronger than women, but men today don't know how to take care of their families. That's why their women walk loose. Their women speak loose. And that's their evil society, that Muslim society has become like that today.
And they're still selling DVDs of Sheikh Faiz, who was trained to preach in a Saudi religious university, condemning disbelievers.
The kafar are kafar. Who cares what they do? They do the most evil, filthy things. The disbelievers, the evil, wicked, mischievous people. Black, you can see the evil in that face. Do not mix with people who do not prostrate to the oneness of Allah Ta'ala, who do not prostrate to the Almighty Lord. Keep far away from people like that.
Last year we found DVDs of him calling Jews pigs, who would be killed at the end of the world. In this new one from the bookshop, he is still condemning Jewish beliefs and Jews themselves.
The leader of pride or arrogance are no other than the Jews. Wallahi, they've got the most extreme racial pride in them. An abominated, filthy, disgusting, gross belief. Their time will come, like every other evil person's time will come.
And they're selling more speeches by Sheikh Khalid Yassin, who learned Arabic in Saudi Arabia. In some of the DVDs we found, he says Muslims could have a constructive relationship with non-Muslims. But in this DVD, he praises the Sharia law practiced in Saudi Arabia, saying he's witnessed public beheadings there.
When you enter Saudi Arabia, everybody knows how everything goes. They're the only ones that have the power and who have the audacity and who have the principle to continue punishing the people as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said punish them. At least I say we Muslims should have that kind of power all over the world. And that people can see people without hands. People can see in the public heads rolling down the street. People got their hands and feet from opposite sides chopped off and they see them crucified. They see people get punished. They see people get put up against a pole and see them get lashed in the public. They see it. And because they see that, that acts as a deterrent for them because they think about that. They say, oh, I don't want that to happen to me.
A Dispatches reporter is filming undercover inside Regent's Park Mosque. It's the most important mosque in the country, and one which claims to be dedicated to promoting moderation and integration. But she found its official bookshop selling speeches attacking non-Muslims.
Disbelievers, the evil, wicked, mischievous people.
And preachers teaching British Muslims to separate from non-Muslims and their society, and to believe in Islamic states with extreme Sharia law.
The one who changes his deen, what we're going to do is kill.
But in the private sessions, Salim criticizes Muslim women who do so.
We are going to see Muslims in every sphere of the everyday life in this country. I see Muslims, it breaks my heart when I see them working in banks, short sleeves, sometimes this tight, scarf like this, makeup, you know, being with the kufa all the time, even speaking with their language.
She learns that this woman has a job in the health service.
No, is the job okay? The job that you are doing, does it involve anything haram or is it?
No.
No,
I
or
work in
halal?
pathology, hematology, just blood tests.
Just blood tests?
Yes.
And they don't allow you to wear jilbab?
Salim finds out that the woman can't wear a jilbab, a full Saudi-style Islamic covering, while at work. And she's working alongside men, which is forbidden by Saudi scholars.
Do you work only with females? No.
Salim says this is not acceptable.
You know that working in an environment that is not Islamic, working with the kuffar, all this takes you away from the deen and hardens your heart. And it will be lying to you if I say it's okay.
The rulings say women are mentally inferior.
Men are superior to women in general.
And restrict their right to work or travel on their own.
When women go to work in the workplace of men, it is in clear opposition to the texts of the Sharia that order the women to remain in their houses and fulfill the type of work upon which Allah has fashioned her nature.
And it tells fathers they can marry their daughters off before they reach puberty without their permission. And gives an idea of some of their teachings on non-Muslims.
Fellow Muslims, following the kafir is disgraceful, while disobeying them is mighty. When a kafir dies, the whole of humanity is relieved. Beware of taking them as friends. You should hate them, disown them and their religion.
This Saudi imam is overcome with emotion while reading a Quranic verse cursing Jews and Christians. Saudi books with the same message of segregation continue to be widely available in Britain, such as these official fatwas sold in Regent's Park Mosque bookshop.
The enemies of Allah are the disbelievers. It is necessary to avoid mixing with non-Muslims, to like them, to love them, to support them, or live amongst them.
The books teach that other religions are worthless. One quotes a Quranic verse.
Those whom God has cursed, he turned into monkeys and pigs.
And in a footnote says,
it is said that the monkeys are the Jews, the pigs are the infidels of the table of Jesus, the Christians.
And another passage sets the children a test.
I read that the books were asking the children to describe the repugnant characteristics of the Jews, and I found that repulsive and appalling. I believe these textbooks will poison the minds of anyone that reads them.
But the British government's policy on tackling radicalism and the message being spread by Saudi theology are incompatible, according to security expert Professor Anthony Cleese.
What the British government wants is for British Muslims to feel part of an inclusive British society. Now, what the Saudi version of Islam is saying is that Islam is not just a religious identity, it is also a political identity. And that they should resist, that it is right to resist being assimilated into mainstream British society.
If you believe in Wahhabism or if you are a supporter of Wahhabism, then basically there is no integration, meeting of two sides. There is no respect for the other side. As a consequence, we have seen Muslims becoming isolated and marginalized.
By the government's own thinking, separateness makes it easier for British Muslims not to regard Britain as their homeland, but as the enemy.
Including works by the former Grand Mufti Sheikh bin Baz, advocating violent Sharia law punishments, such as death for Muslims who believe homosexuality is permissible.
It is permitted to shed his blood and take his belongings.
The books say love, support, loyalty and friendship with disbelievers is forbidden. Muslims must do jihad until all countries are ruled by Islam.
If some of the people of the non-Islamic countries stand against Islam, they must be fought.
And they must act upon the reported words of the Prophet.
The last day will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and kill them.
Our reporter was given a sample copy of the translated Qurans they distribute in Britain. It's brand new, published in the last 2 years, and is produced under the supervision of the Saudi Ministry of Islamic Affairs. It bears King Abdullah's own seal of approval. We showed the new translation to Sheikh Musa Admani, who studied Islam at India's top religious universities.
Whoever believes in Allah in the last day.
A number of verses in the Quran preach peace and tolerance between Muslims, Jews and Christians. But the Saudi Quran contains footnotes saying these verses are no longer true, a narrow interpretation, not followed by moderate Muslims.
These scholars from Saudi Arabia are saying that it has been abrogated has been cancelled. It does no longer apply because it doesn't fit in well with the ideology of segregation.
Another footnote explicitly preaches segregation.
This indicates that a Muslim should not stay in a non-Muslim country.
The Muslim World League told us some of the books we quoted from had been donated to them 10 years ago, assessed, considered not suitable for distribution, and left in the basement. With regards to the translation of the Quran, it said,
"No translation is perfect, and not every interpretation is agreed. You have managed to find a few footnotes which you dislike, and which most readers probably do not even bother to read."
It said any allegation that it is promoting a theology of intolerance, separatism and extremism was offensive and entirely untrue. The Royal Embassy of Saudi Arabia told us that the King Fahd Academy, the Muslim World League and the Islamic Cultural Centre and Central Mosque were not part of the Saudi Arabian government or its instruments. It said,
"The Saudi Arabian government does not advocate or support the bigoted beliefs of extremists, and there is no such organization as the Saudi Arabian religious establishment."
It said Saudi Arabia promotes tolerance and mutual understanding and is at the forefront of international campaigns to stamp out and rehabilitate extremists. The British government says Saudi Arabia is its partner in tackling extremism, but critics say it's turned a blind eye to the importation of Wahhabism for years. Dennis McShane was a Foreign Office Minister from 2002 to 2005 and became worried at the government's attitude to radical Saudi teaching.
The British establishment, in my judgment, in the sense of Whitehall, senior ministers, refused to look at the penetration of Wahhabism into schools, into mosques. The ideology of what Wahhabism promotes is deeply inimical and dangerous to British values, but at the other level, this was a huge source of revenue for British companies, British state, British people, and that stopped, I think, any robust criticism of the Saudis. We were not firm enough in saying you should not export Wahhabism.
He says the 7th of July bombings have been a wake-up call to ministers, but the government still doesn't take a strong enough line with Saudi Arabia.
Clearly, Britain is a big trading state with an important defence industry, needs a relationship with Saudi Arabia, but we have to say quite clearly you can't export anti-Jewish, anti-democratic, anti-Western, anti-rule of law, homophobic, anti-women ideology dressed up as a religion. That is not acceptable.
The British government told us,
"We have put in place robust legislation to combat incitement to religious hatred, violence and terrorism. All individuals and organisations based in the UK are subject to this legislation, regardless of the provenance of their funding or connections to third countries, Saudi or otherwise."
That we find the Nasara, the Yahud, America, the UK, France, Germany, they have come against the religion of Al-Islam. Why give up your deen and your long legacy of Al-Islam to please someone who is enemy to me?